Hello people, this is part 2 of my video, and possibly the last part, on Dungeons and Dragons and the Knights of Christ. This was started out to be a one-day, ended up being a 2-day speed painting project on plastic 54mm 1/32 scale toys. Trying to turn them into something that, if not beautifully painted, was at least presentable for a miniatures war game, a fantasy miniatures war game, or Dungeons and Dragons. And we've got all this together here. What you're looking at right now is what I ended up painting. It is 101 figures, 110 pieces altogether. Got a few accessories in there. And Butters the Wonder Dog has just wandered off. So let's go ahead and get started. These figures are... the ones that I painted in the last couple of days are all either out of the True Heroes Mythical Warriors set, or the True Heroes Pirate set, which also includes skeletons, or the Supreme Play sets. That's these over here, and those I talked about another day, so we're not going to go into them today. Now this, and unfortunately, it looks quite... You're stuck in one of these positions where I can tell you it looks quite nice close up, but not so much on video. I just don't know how to get the camera to catch the subtleties, but this is an elf. And I painted him in a kind of an eclectic manner. I did it according to what's called the Green Man trope. The Green Man trope kind of had elves as sort of forest creatures and sort of aligned with the devil, and it's something straight out of the Middle Ages. If you want an example of this, probably the best place to go is Sir Bertilac from Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. He's the giant green knight with a green beard and green skin and green armor and all this stuff, who gets his head cut off and then puts his head back on and tells Sir Gawain, well, now you have to come to my castle in a year, and and I'll give you the same. And he tempts him, and Sir Gawain kind of passed the tests, and that's it. But he wasn't the the Caucasian-skinned but pointy-eared fox elf trope of Tolkien. He was just a solid green figure, and you have to consider that in the medieval mind, green is a symbol of the forest, it's a symbol of nature, and nature is still a pretty scary thing. We hadn't conquered it anywhere near back then the way we have now. So it's seen as, something wild and untamed and unfriendly, and also the haunt of various spirits, etc. So anyway, a little bit more specific on this. All I did with this guy, and I wish you could, I just wish you could see the figure as I can see him here. He is green. I did not bother priming him in any way. I simply dry brushed a lighter green over the darker green, a lighter green still on the skin, and then dry brushed a gold over that, and then a little silver on his bow, and back in the back a little bit more there, and it makes a very simple figure that is obviously identifiable immediately as an elf, obviously identifiable immediately as something non-human, which kind of helps where 54mm gaming is concerned. Similar to this girl here is a similar piece. One of the problems that I've run into with 54mm sets over the years, play sets, is that you tend to get an enormous number of the figures that you don't need. I only painted up, a few of her. I ended up with an enormous number of her, as opposed to only a few barbarians and a few dwarves, which would have been much more handy. But I imagine she's what came out of the mold a little better than anything else did. You can kind of see it a little bit better on this figure here, who I also did up as an elf, even though he looks more like a barbarian warrior. The reason I did that is that these figures have problems with scale. They're really more properly 1/35, though they're sold as 1/32. There is a knight set that goes along with these, but they're even shorter, and I didn't want really short humans. So I did the Supreme Play sets, the Turks and the Crusaders back here, which are considerably taller, which works quite well for something like this. Another example of that is this figure right here. This is a goblin. He would probably be an orc, except that he's too short to be an orc, according to the conventions of of how big an orc should be compared to a man. But he's perfectly good size for a goblin compared to one of these knights. And I'll just pull up one of these guys here and show you what I'm talking about. Obviously he's considerably shorter, but for a more smaller, more diminutive goblin creature, he works very well. All I did with him, dry brushed him in bronze, some brown for his boots, silver for his weapons and his helmet, green for his skin, and off we go. Again, I'm not trying to make a really beautifully painted set here, just something that I can knock around, something that's ready to get up and do some gaming with. Moving right along, the dwarf is a very nice figure, I think, and I kind of like the heraldry on his shield back there. He's got a lightning bolt that I painted red. Him, I simply dry brush silver. I should point out that all these guys I've shown you, other than the elves and the skeleton, were not simply dry brushed. I wanted a black undercoat, and for that I used Krylon Fusion, which is a paint that bonds to plastic. A black undercoat always works very well because you can dry brush over it and create an instant shadow effect. And so I dry brush silver over that, then I just put some flesh tone on him, some brown for his hair. I kind of thought that the shield needed a little extra color, so I put some bronze on that. And we're ready to go there. Most of these other figures very similar. Here's a witch, which I also got an enormous number of, and only a very few dwarves. But I gave her green skin as well, and a kind of a reddish wand, and she's off to raise mayhem and havoc. I'll show you the dragon at this point. Him I didn't care for so well. I don't think he's a bad figure. I know other folks have said so, but for whatever reason he just didn't paint very evenly. Or maybe it's just a lack of my skill. He is one that I would probably do over. I might actually go over him with a thin wash of red and see how that works out. Kind of tone down those gold scales a little bit. Now, out of the skeleton pirate set, you've already seen how I've done some of the skeletons. I want to go back and show you. I said I was saving 4 of the skeletons for something a little different, and I'm going to show you an example of that here. The one I'm grabbing now is one of the original 20 skeletons, and he's just basically painted like a skeleton, bone coloring. This one, however, exact same figure, but I simply spray painted him in the Krylon black, dry brushed a red over him, and then a little bit of a gold for kind of a hellish effect, and that's all I did, other than in this case putting in glowing green eyes. The reason for that is that Dungeons & Dragons assumes an enormous number of different fantastic monsters and a lot of different undead monsters, from the lowly skeleton all the way up to the mighty vampire and the lich, who's an undead wizard. And I wanted something that looked a little bit more powerful, looked a little bit more, like he had some nasty supernatural stuff going on. And so I did, 4 of them in that scheme. Now, I did have some throwaway figures in these sets, and where plastic play sets are concerned, I just don't think you can avoid that, because you just end up with some stuff that you can't do anything with. But I did the best I could to hold on to as much as I could. The pirates I really initially liked, because they don't look very much like pirates. They kind of look more like 17th century militia, or maybe 16th century militia. And the problem is that they're too short. They are so short that to compare them, and I'll just grab this this crossbowman here again. I'm sorry, give me just a second. Having computer problems here. Okay. To compare them to this this crossbowman, you can see that he's very, very short indeed. He's only comes up to about chest height on him, but he doesn't really have a terribly piratey look to him. He doesn't he doesn't have a wooden leg and skull and crossbones and bandanas and all that kind of stuff. And I think he makes a pretty good looking hobbit, so I just painted him up more or less like that. Again, just a Krylon undercoat and a little spray painting on top of it. Pretty well there. And other than that, I am going to be using for this game a lot of plastic toys that I've collected over the years. There's a nice nasty cobra, and there's a genie right there who's kind of worth looking at because he's got a transparent base on him, which has a rather cool look. Giant spider. And of course, it wouldn't be Dungeons and Dragons if we didn't have a nice dragon. And I got this fella for about $6, I think, at a Michael's, and they were on sale. And he's even if the other dragon doesn't work out, he's certainly well worth it. And most of these were cheap toy pieces. Some of the Papo creatures and the Schleich creatures you can probably, this wolf is rather nice, throw in here quite well. And here's an Ifrit, another kind of a genie. Well, I'm kind of running over on the length of this video, so I'm going to go ahead and cut off now, and I may do another one in the future. I may not, but that's what I've been doing so far.